thank you for being here once again. What would you say to those people who are against the production of Arms and the Man?
There's really nothing to say. I think it's something they've decided to be against. I'm not sure how many, if any, have actually read the play. This is quite a famous play, quite well known, and a very good play, I think. Funny, and I'm not Bulgarian, but I can't imagine why this play, which is a work of fiction set in Bulgaria, which has very charming Bulgarian characters, would be regarded as so offensive. But, you know, people are offended by what they're offended by. You know, I would have preferred to invite protesters to a preview. I doubt they would find it offensive, really. And certainly, of course, that was never my intention, nor the National Theatre's intention. It's a funny, charming, romantic comedy, that's all.
Quick. Can you please sit here so I can have his face for the purpose of the interview?
How do you perceive the Bulgarian audience reaction? Can you believe it?
Well, we haven't had much of an audience. I mean, probably less than 60 people have seen it. I wouldn't really know. But last night, the people that were here laughed at things I would have expected, and I think they enjoyed it. But I've only played for Bulgarian audiences a very few times, a couple of times I think here at the National Theatre with a play called In the Solitude of Cotton Fields, and that was a very good audience. And then in Varna, I can't remember if we did one show or two shows, it wasn't very many, of a kind of opera, classical music collaboration piece called The Infernal Comedy, which is actually pretty profoundly offensive in a lot of ways. Very worrisome story, but the audiences were great, and mostly my experience here is with the actors, who I think are just wonderful actors, who I loved coming to work every day and watching what they did, what they came up with. They're funny, they're daring, they're bright, they're very well trained, and very imaginative. So for me, it's been a delight, and it still is.
Great. Did you expect that our premiere would be shown to just about 100 people, given that you're a director and actor whose work has been known to millions and millions of people?
You know, it's funny, I sent a great friend of mine from my very early theater days a video just last week of the theater upstairs by where we rehearse. That's 89 seats, and our theater was 88 seats. And we often had no audience at all show up. I don't worry about that too much. For a comedy, a bigger audience is helpful. For a drama, it matters less. But I never have expectations. I'm too old for expectations. You know, there could be 5 people here, or there could be a full house, I don't know. And I don't worry about it too much. I think it's unfortunate for the National Theatre that so few people could get in who bought tickets. and that shouldn't be allowed. Protesting, yes, but blocking people's entrance, it's not really, that's not on in civilized society, really.
True. What were you thinking about in the empty hall last night?
Nothing really. I was talking to friends even about other things who happened to be here. There were some Serbians who came from the National Theater of Serbia, because this is also supposed to be a play that creates a hateful atmosphere for Serbs, I believe I was told, which is just absurd. They seem to love it. I would imagine at least part Serbian on my grandmother's side. I like Serbia. I've performed there. All of the things said about the play have nothing to do with the play, but it's a Bulgarian thing about political power and etc. And I'm not interested in insulting the Bulgarian army or the memory of this war or anything else about Bulgaria. I'm here because I like Bulgaria. So, but as I say, you know, people get offended for a catholicity of reasons, and sometimes the reason they get offended is to grab more power. It's not really about being offended. That's my personal opinion. And I see it all across the world. This isn't actually really just a Bulgarian issue to do with this play. It's an issue in the whole world. There are issues like this. You're saying this, how dare you say this? There is a movement afoot to limit free speech under the guise of hate speech. The protesters of this play are perfectly allowed to say how much they hate it. None of them have seen it, but that's perfectly fine and should be allowed to say what you hate in free societies. It's fine. To prohibit other people from coming and making their own judgments is thuggery. But hating something, people hate things all the time. But I don't hate what the protesters do, especially the sincere ones of whatever percentage that is. But I'm not going to be offended because they're offended. They can be offended at whatever they want to be offended by. I don't mind at all. My work has often offended people, and I've often offended people. And I understand.
Speaking of that, has something similar to what happened last night ever happened to you before?
Yeah. There was, I did a piece of a great Argentinian writer. I can't say it was my fault, but that I had a date in Buenos Aires or a couple, 3 days to do a piece I adapted from the great Argentinian novel on heroes and tombs, piece called Report on the Blind. It was just about a 24-minute classical music collaboration, 25-minute, whatever. And some people took great offense to that, and the other piece that I had to do kind of out of desperation and create while the day before the piece played, because the promoters there had announced that it was an evening with me, meaning not I was doing a 25-minute piece in an evening of something else, and I had made that very clear to my agent and booking agent at the time, and I had made it clear over and over in very clear terms. And yet still, when I got to Buenos Aires, it was called An Evening with John Malkovich, which I resented profoundly, but unable to find out who had said, and everybody lied about it, I think, who had said it would be an evening with John Malkovich. At the time I was directing a play in London. I had made exceedingly clear that I would come, I would play Buenos Aires and Mendoza, and was very happy to do so. And but that's all I would be doing in the evening, and instead I had to end up doing a whole other piece, which they complained about as well. When I did a piece funded by the Goethe Institute in Chicago at a theater called Wisdom Bridge with a Chicago director and colleague of mine. It was a little novella of Peter Handke's, which we adapted as a play, and my curtain call often included people throwing programs at me. But, you know, to be in the public eye, to be in the theater, to be in movies, you have to understand something. You have put yourself in the public sphere, and you believe that you maybe have something to say, something to relay or relate to a public. But you have to understand that the public may not like it, and they may hate it. So normally that would come when people are seeing something or have seen something. This, nobody has seen it. So it's quite odd, but it doesn't really, people get offended by a lot of things, and I don't have any intention of responding to that, because that's their right. It's not their right to prohibit people from coming who bought tickets. In fact, there should be a lawsuit, because if I'd bought tickets, I want my money from them, not from the National Theater, but from them, because they're the ones prohibiting. So I think that is really thuggery. But hating it, even without seeing it, is not. It's opinion may be whipped up by people I wouldn't care to associate with, particularly, but I don't know them, and maybe they're great. But when you haven't seen something and you hate it, okay, that's one thing, but you don't have any right to prohibit other people from seeing it, you know.
In light of last night's events, has your opinion of Bulgaria and or Bulgarians shifted in any way?
No. No. It's upsetting that people weren't allowed in who wanted to see it. But I see that happening all across the world often. In university campuses in America, students don't want to hear a speech they disagree with. And how do they do that? They say it's hate speech, or it's obscene, or it's fascist, or it's this or that. No, they're fascist, because they can't hear things they disagree with. And I think a foundational element of culture is to be able to hear things you disagree with. Some of them may be right, if right exists in certain situations. But I don't know, I'm very much against censorship, and I'm very much against canceling people because they believe differently to me. I don't know anybody who regards the world the way I regard the world, nor do I particularly want to meet someone who does, nor would I even agree with them if they agreed with my view of the world. I'm pretty sanguine about human behavior, and I know from being a person who's been somewhat known in the world for some number of years, it's not all adulation and tropical drinks on the veranda. There are a lot of things that come with being known that are profoundly unpleasant. But for me, they can protest all they want, but the government is responsible, really, and the security forces to make sure they don't prohibit people from coming to something they have paid for, you know.
Considering the premiere of Arms and Men, has your belief in goodness and humanity changed in any way?
No, I mean, I've seen a lot of rough things in my life. Sadly, I think it's quite a charming, funny play with very rich, interesting Bulgarian characters. So that makes me sad. It's unfortunate, but I don't, already from this summer, I had been told this could be a contentious piece to play. I told the theater, listen, I probably can't do another play this year because it's too late to choose something and get it together and the design and all that stuff. But of course, I'm happy to do it if you want to go ahead with it, and that's the decision of the National Theater, which I respect, and I'm very happy to have done it. And I think if an audience comes, I think they'll enjoy it. And I simply don't think it's offensive at all. But it doesn't change my opinion about people. I mean, for me, political sort of movements, I'm quite cynical about that because I'm quite cynical about politics, and quite cynical about ideology. What people use for political attention or political power is not something I particularly enjoy. And I stay away from politics, kind of at all costs. But my job is to work in theater and in movies. My job in this case is to direct a play. And I've loved doing that, and working with the actors here has been a delight. So it I'm too old to change. I like people. I rarely meet someone I can't get along with or can't work with. It almost never happens in my entire life, and I'm 70 years old, so I'm not one of these people going, oh, I hate him, oh, I hate her, oh, I hate him, oh, I hate her. I don't. No, I find common ground with quite a number of people in my life, and I don't find people disappointing, really. They're just people, you know.
Considering everything that's happened with your experience here, would you come to Bulgaria for another project, directing
Of course.
or playing a part?
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah. I mean, there's the question, would I be asked to? But I wouldn't. Yes, of course. I'm just not. I think this was a case of. It's purely a sort of political opportunism gone amok. This is not a political play at all. How can it be by someone who knew absolutely nothing about Bulgaria, about Bulgarian culture, had never visited, had no interest whatsoever, and was an Anglo-Irish writer, and all that meant of that generation. You know, there's long in the English language, the phrase, the wogs start at Calais. I'm sure you've probably heard it. What does that mean? The rest of the world is wogs. What does that mean? Well, it's a insult, but mostly it's just blah, blah, blah. People say all sorts of stupid things. And I think a lot of times, especially now, people really work to censor free speech. And, you know, I wouldn't have any interest in doing that in this situation or any other. So.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Those were all of our questions.
Very good.